About a week ago, I went for my usual evening walk around 6 p.m. It's something I do almost every day, just a habit I enjoy. But that day, it was already dark out, which was a bit unusual for the time, and my quiet little neighborhood felt even quieter than usual. I stepped out of my street, and at the end of it, I noticed a police car parked off to the side of the pavement. I didn't think much of it at first and just crossed to the opposite side to keep walking. I headed toward a long road that stretches out near some wide-open fields. It's a peaceful route, perfect for clearing my head. As I walked, I heard a car behind me. At first, I brushed it off. Cars pass by all the time, right? But this one fell off. It was pitch black out, and the car had its lights off, which struck me as strange. Still, I told myself it was probably nothing, especially since it was a cop car. I kept going, and the car drove past me, pulling into a parking lot at the end of the road. It parked facing me, headlights blaring right into my eyes, so I couldn't make out the car or who was inside. Now, let me be clear, I wasn't dressed like I was up to no good. I looked like your average guy, presentable, wearing decent, kind of high-end clothes, nothing flashy or suspicious. No hoodie up, no sketchy vibes, just a regular dude out for a walk. So I took a left toward an industrial estate, a long, quiet road where a few businesses were still open. As I walked, I noticed the car again. Every time there was a spot to pull over, it would drive past me, park up ahead, and wait, always facing me with those blinding headlights. This kept happening over and over, and it was starting to creep me out. By the time I reached the end of the industrial estate, I was pretty sure this car was following me. To test it, I crossed the road and casually slipped onto a tree-lined path where the car couldn't follow or see me. This path led to a school, and when I got there, guess who was waiting? Yup, that same police car, lights glaring right in my face. At this point, I knew for sure this guy was tailing me. I took a right toward a busier part of my village, near some shops and fast food joints, hoping the crowd would shake him off. The car was nowhere to be seen, so I started heading back home. But when I got to the end of my street, there it was parked in the exact same spot as when I'd left. I walked past the side of the car, and there was this guy inside, staring at me with this creepy, unsettling smile. His eyes locked onto mine, watching me the whole way until I was out of sight. I got home, went to bed, and just lay there thinking, what the heck just happened? The next day, I decided to go for my walk at the same time, taking the exact same route, just to see what would happen. Sure enough, at the end of my street, there was the same police car, parked in the same spot. Now I knew something was definitely up. I walked the same route, and the car followed me again, using the same tactic, driving past, parking ahead, and watching me with those headlights in my face. I still couldn't figure out why this was happening. I'm not involved in anything shady. I don't have enemies, and I keep to myself. There's no reason for anyone to be tailing me like this. When I got back to my street, the car was there again, in the same spot. The guy inside gave me that same creepy look. Only this time it felt even more chilling, like he was enjoying this. I didn't go for a walk the next day, and honestly, I haven't been out since. I'm planning to go for a walk tomorrow to see if the car shows up again, but man, this whole thing has me rattled. This happened back in the summer of 2014, right after my freshman year of college. I was 19, working as a cashier at a big Walmart on a busy shopping center street. I live in a small town about 40 minutes away, but the drive didn't bother me much since my mom and I would come to this area almost every weekend anyway. I was a pretty polite but soft-spoken gal back then, always trying to keep the peace. I got along with most of my coworkers, but I hadn't fully grown a backbone yet, still working on that honestly. I never thought I'd be a target for creeps. I wasn't cocky or anything, just figured I wasn't the type they'd go for. I was a bigger girl at the time, and in my head, creeps only bothered petite, super pretty girls. Boy, was I wrong. I learned real quick that just being female was enough for some people. At Walmart, I worked with all kinds of folks, and there was this one guy who stood out. He was older, maybe in his early 40s, thin, not too tall, maybe 5 feet 11 inches, and I think he was Jamaican based on his accent. He was a cart pusher, always smiling and chatting with people when he wasn't working. I talked to him sometimes on my way in or out of the store, or when he'd catch me during a break. But honestly, those conversations always felt a little awkward. His accent was hard to understand at first, and I'd feel guilty for not catching what he was saying. Over a few weeks, though, I got used to it. One day, I was coming in for a later shift, and he walked up with me to the store entrance, asking the usual stuff Walmart coworkers chat about. How you doing? When do you get off? You working tomorrow? Totally normal, or so I thought. But just as we were about to part ways, he handed me a piece of paper. I looked at it. It was his phone number. He told me to call him when I got off work, smiling at me all expectant-like. My brain just froze. I wasn't the type to think on my feet, and this had never happened to me before. He kept staring, waiting for a response, and I just mumbled, "Okay," not knowing what else to say. He seemed satisfied and walked off. The whole shift, I was a nervous wreck, dreading what I'd do next. There was no way I was calling him. I didn't even know him. Why would he want my number unless he was into me? He was way too old for me, and I started wondering if he took my friendliness as a sign I liked him. I was nice to everyone, so maybe he got the wrong idea. That thought just made my anxiety worse. I didn't call him that night. The next day, he caught me right as I was walking into the store. Thank goodness there were people around, because he was pissed. He demanded to know why I hadn't called him. I stammered out some excuse about being super busy, and he just smiled, saying he understood, but told me not to forget to call him that night. I looked down at my shoes, avoiding his gaze, and he waited until I nodded before walking off. My stomach was in knots the whole shift, and I still didn't call him. Luckily, he wasn't around for my next few shifts, and I started to relax. Around that time, I got moved to the garden center to help with cashiering. I also learned the basics of caring for the plants, which was honestly kind of fun. The people there were even cooler than the main store crew. The only downside, the garden center was right by the parking lot, so I was more exposed to anyone outside like him. But I got lucky, there were other girls working the plants, and I stayed busy with customers inside. One night, I got off at 11 p.m. We were told to park in the back of the lot so customers could have the front spots. The employee parking was even color-coded for us. My car, a 1996 Buick Park Avenue, stood out like a sore thumb. Most people my age thought it was an old person's car, but I loved that thing. Apparently, so did my cart pusher coworker, because he'd clearly memorized it. That night, as I walked out, I was one of the last ones leaving, and my car was one of the only ones left in the back lot. I didn't see him at first, but as I got closer, I spotted his bright yellow vest. My heart sank. I power walked to my car, locked the doors, and turned it on. He kept striding toward me, and even though part of me was screaming to just peel out, my stupid polite side made me wait. I double-checked my locks and cracked the window just enough to talk, but not enough for him to reach in. "Hey, you just getting out?" he asked, all casual, like he wasn't freaking me out. I was surprised he didn't start off angry. "Yeah, and you?" I replied, trying to keep it cool. "I'm out for another hour," he said, then paused. "So, I've been meaning to ask you something. How old are you?" I blinked, totally thrown off. My brain couldn't come up with an excuse fast enough, so I just said, "I'm 19. "Why?" The word slipped out too easily, and then he smiled, all happy-go-lucky, and said, "Oh, I just love you." I froze, looking around, then back at him. "Pardon?" I said, hoping I'd misheard. "I love you," he repeated, still smiling. My stomach dropped. I just wanted to get out of there. "Thanks, I gotta go," I said, fumbling. "Okay, sure, I'll see you soon," he replied, all cheerful, but that sentence sent a chill down my spine. I drove off, trying not to speed, but I could feel his eyes on me. I was shaking, on the verge of a panic attack. Instead of going home, I pulled into the parking lot of a rival store nearby and just lost it. I called a friend who I knew stayed up late and was super rational. I was crying and shaking as I spilled everything to him. What if we got off at the same time one night? What if he followed me home? I didn't want him knowing where I lived. My friend stayed calm, keeping me on the phone the whole 40-minute drive home. He didn't have experience with this kind of thing, but he promised to get in touch with another friend of mine who did. a girl who dealt with a full-on stalker before. He reached her through Skype, and she called me a few minutes after I got home. She listened to me vent, still freaked out even in my own room. She told me her stalker story and said this guy's behavior wasn't okay and could escalate if I didn't do something. She urged me to tell Walmart management. I was hesitant. I didn't want to get him in too much trouble since he hadn't done anything major yet, but she insisted it was the right move. The next day, I talked to my boss. She was understanding and helped me file a report, but she warned me it might turn into a he said, she said situation since I didn't have the paper with his number anymore. She also said he'd have the right to know about the report, which made me uneasy, but I went through with it. That same day, I was working in the garden center with 3 of my favorite coworkers, including a tall, easygoing guy named Brendan. He handled a lot of the heavy outdoor equipment and had taught me how to care for the plants. While I was outside, Mr. I Love You tried to wave me down with that same creepy smile. I turned and bolted inside, my anxiety spiking. I was on the verge of tears, imagining all sorts of awful scenarios about what could happen at the end of my shift. Brendan noticed I was off and asked if I was okay. I didn't want to spill everything, so I just asked when he was getting off. He said he finished an hour before me, but was sticking around to wait for his girlfriend, who got off an hour after me. I asked if he'd walk me to my car without saying why. To my surprise, Brendan brought up Mr. I Love You himself. Apparently, the guy was also bothering another coworker, a woman around his age, much smaller than me. She liked eating in her car for privacy, but he'd been staring at her through her window during her breaks, every single shift they shared, until she couldn't take it anymore. Brendan agreed to walk me to my car after my shift. When the time came, Mr. I Love You stayed far away, just staring at both of us as Brendan walked me over. Brendan stared right back at him, and I thanked him before getting in my car and leaving. I heard later that Walmart got multiple complaints about this guy, and they told him to leave us alone. Thankfully, he listened. I saw him a few times after that when I was back on the main checkout lines, but he wouldn't make eye contact. Not long after, he just disappeared. I don't know if he got fired or quit, but I was relieved to never see him again. A few years later, I got a message from the rational friend I'd called that night. We weren't as close anymore, so I was surprised to hear from him. He apologized for not taking me seriously back then. He said a girl he knew had gone through something similar recently, but it ended much worse for her. That made him think back to my situation and realize how bad it could have been. The fact that this guy was following me, trying to talk to me every chance he got, and saying he loved me were all red flags for a stalker or worse. The fact that he just vanished and no one knows where he went. That's not a great sign either. Even now, years later, I still find myself looking over my shoulder in dark parking lots. A few years back, I was working the second shift, getting off at midnight. Most nights, I'd swing by Denny's for a late dinner to unwind. It was my little routine, grab a booth, crack open a book, and eat while the world quieted down. One night, I was sitting there, reading and munching away, when I glanced up and noticed a guy at another table. He was by himself, just staring at me. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe he was just people watching, you know. Our eyes met, and he quickly looked away. I shrugged it off and went back to my book. A little while later, I looked up again, and there he was staring at me again. Same thing happened. I contact, then he looked away. My gut started to tingle, like something wasn't quite right, but he hadn't done anything, so I tried to let it go. I finished my food, got up, and headed to the register to pay. The second I did, he got up too, right behind me in line. That's when I started feeling creeped out. I paid quickly, then stepped to the side, pretending to rummage through my purse for something, just to stall. He lingered for a moment, paid, and then walked out of the building. I waited a few minutes, cursing myself for parking on the side of the building instead of out front by the windows. If this happened now, I'd probably ask an employee to walk me out, but back then, I was young and didn't want to bother anyone. So I took a deep breath and headed to my car on high alert, scanning the lot. I got in, locked the doors, and just as I was about to pull out, this guy's car pulled up right next to mine. He started getting out. My heart was racing, and I was freaking out. I slammed the locks again for good measure and peeled out of my parking spot as fast as I could. There were two ways out of the lot, a driveway a few feet away that led straight to the service road, which would have taken me right past his car, or I could go around the building and cut through the Waffle House parking lot next door to their exit. I chose to go around the building. Sure enough, he jumped back in his car and started following me. I was full on panicking now, my hands shaking on the wheel. I didn't want to go home. I wasn't about to let this guy know where I lived. Looking back, I should have driven straight to a police station, but in the moment, my brain wasn't thinking that clearly. Thankfully, the Waffle House next door had a big wall of windows and a parking spot right out front. I pulled in, jumped out of my car, and practically sprinted inside. I glanced back and saw his car stop behind mine, and this guy had the most enraged look on his face, like he was furious I'd gotten away. I was shaking, nearly hyperventilating, when the waitresses, bless their hearts, noticed something was wrong. One of them came over and asked what was going on. I stuttered out that I thought I was being followed. She didn't hesitate. She walked around a counter, stood next to me, and just stared down this creep through the window until he finally drove off. She sat me down in a booth, handed me a cup of coffee, and told me to hang out for a bit before heading home. I stayed there for about 20 minutes, sipping coffee and trying to calm my nerves. When I finally left, I was watching every car on the road, paranoid he'd show up again. I never went back to that Denny's after work again. A while later, I dropped off a thank you note for the waitresses during the day, because they really saved me that night. The whole thing scared the absolute crap out of me. What makes me mad, even now, is that when I told some friends about it, a couple of them tried to brush it off, saying maybe he just thought I was cute and wanted to talk. No, they didn't see the look on his face when I got to the Waffle House. That guy wasn't trying to flirt, he wanted to hurt me. I'm just thankful he didn't get the chance. This happened about 2.5 years ago, back when I was 19. I'm a short gal, 5'2.5", and yet that half-inch matters when you're this darn short. I just moved to Seattle from a small town in California. My dad raised me to always be aware of my surroundings and taught me how to defend myself from a young age. I knew if something bad went down, I'd at least go down swinging. Seattle's a mixed bag, beautiful in parts, but a big city with all kinds of people. Rich, poor, stable, unhinged, kind, rude, you name it. Gunshots weren't uncommon, and you'd catch sketchy glances from folks with drugged-out sniffles or track marks on their arms, wandering around bus stops and bars. I'd see people stealing in stores or muttering to themselves, always a good 20 feet away, but it was just part of the vibe. Seattle's got a lot of folks struggling with mental illness, cycling in and out of the justice system instead of getting the help they need. It was October, and the rain was coming and going, so I usually carried a big black hooded jacket in my backpack. Keeping my hood up was my go-to at night. It made me look less approachable, like I wasn't someone to mess with. But that night, I forgot my jacket. I was dressed nice, looking put together and friendly, which probably made me seem like an easy target. No jacket, no creepy nighttime vibe to ward people off. Just me looking like a naive kid in the rain. My friend, who was just as short as me and often mistaken for my sister, had recently moved in with me to escape an abusive ex from her tiny hometown. We decided to head downtown for her first big adventure in Seattle. Big mistake number 1. We got downtown around 10 p.m. thanks to public transportation, which was fine since the buses run late in Seattle. Window shopping wasn't an option, most stores were closed by then, and it was the end of the month, so we were broke. I googled for McDonald's that was still open inside so we could grab some cheap burgers. The closest one was an hour's walk away, so we set off in that direction. As we walked, the street lights got dimmer and the area started looking seedier. Buildings loomed around us, and then my phone died out of nowhere. Typical iPhone nonsense. My friend only had a flip phone, useless for directions, so we just kept walking, hoping to stumble across the McDonald's by luck. That was big mistake number 2. We walked for what felt like forever, starving and lost in this sketchy part of town. We passed a bar across the street, and suddenly we heard a guy yelling, cussing, and freaking out. People were shouting back at him, telling him to get lost. We started laughing at first. This dude was clearly drunk or high, acting like a total nutcase. But our laughter stopped when we realized he was crossing the street toward us, probably chased off by the crowd. My stomach dropped. He yelled, "Hey, slow down. Nice legs." We sped up, but he kept going, shouting, "Hey, I'm talking to you, bitch," from maybe 10 feet behind us. We broke into a fast jog, and I pulled out my pocket knife, holding it close to my side so it wasn't obvious. I glanced at my friend and told her to dial 911. Her eyes were wide with terror, and I could tell she was frozen. Some people fight or flee, but she was stuck in that third mode, complete freeze. The guy caught up to us and grabbed her arm. I shoved him with everything I had, prying his hand off her while still gripping my knife in the other hand. He staggered back but started coming at us again. "Call the cops now," I yelled, but she just stared at me, petrified, like a deer in headlights. I pushed her behind me and told her to walk the other way, but she stayed glued to the spot, too scared to move. I could feel him right behind me now, mumbling and calling us names for ignoring his so-called compliments. Then he lunged at me. I whipped out my knife, holding it up in plain sight, pressing it against his red sweater. He was a mess, long, scraggly beard, chapped lips, beady eyes, and greasy dark hair that looked wet. His clothes were torn and dirty, and he smelled so bad it could choke you. He froze, staring at my knife, then spat in my face and started cussing me out. The spit stung my eyes, blurring my vision. I started swinging the knife in the air, yelling as loud as I could to draw attention. My friend was still cowering behind me, useless in her panic. The guy took off, speed-walking back toward the bars. I told my friend to call the cops again, but she was ghost white, shaking. Frustrated, I grabbed her flip phone and called 911 myself. The operator was no help at all. I gave her our location and described the guy, but she just sarcastically asked how they'd find him if he'd already walked away, saying my description sounded like half the bums downtown. She told me I had to stay put or they wouldn't bother checking it out without a witness. That wasn't exactly comforting. My friend begged me to leave, but I kept thinking about what could happen if this guy went after someone else, someone who froze like my friend or didn't have a knife. I told the operator we'd wait for an officer. We hid behind a building, out of sight but close enough to peek at the street. The guy was still there, pacing up and down, looking around like he was hunting for us. 20 minutes passed, no cops. I called again, and the operator said they were on their way. 45 minutes later, still nothing. I called a third time, and they just repeated, "We told you, they're coming." An hour later, my friend convinced me we had to leave, or we'd miss the last bus home. We booked it to the bus stop and made it back safely. I cooked dinner at home, and 2.5 hours later, I noticed a missed call on my friend's phone, probably from the police. I didn't bother calling back. What was the point? Anything could have happened in that time, and no one showed up. I even tried flagging down a cop car we saw on the way, but the officer just flipped on his lights and sped off after someone running a stoplight. That guy was probably long gone by then. The dispatcher's sarcastic tone about my description made me feel like no one would care enough to look for him. He looked like your typical downtown drifter, so why would they bother? In the end, nothing happened, but I can't shake the feeling we had a narrow escape. It's a tough job being a 911 dispatcher. Some calls stick with you, no matter how much time passes. The ones involving kids, those hit the hardest. There's nothing worse than a child's voice on the line, scared out of their mind, and knowing you were the last person they spoke to before their world turned upside down. No matter how many times I go over it, I can't shake the guilt. I keep thinking, what if I'd said something else? What if I'd done more? Even when it feels like I did everything by the book, that nagging doubt never goes away. For confidentiality, I changed all the names, but the story, it's real. This one came in on a Saturday night, just past 10 p.m. 911, what's your emergency? I said, my voice steady, ready for whatever was coming. A faint whisper came through the line, barely audible. There's someone in my house. My heart kicked up a notch, but I kept my tone calm. Okay, can you tell me where you live? And what's happening? My name's William, the voice said, trembling. I live, my mom and dad are on vacation, so I'm home alone. All right, William, are you hiding right now? I asked, already typing to dispatch. Yeah, I'm in my dad's office. I locked it from the inside. You need a key to get in. His voice was small, but he sounded like he was trying to stay brave. Perfect. Is there somewhere else you can hide in there, just in case someone gets in? I needed him to stay safe, to keep thinking clearly. No. Yeah, there is. I'm already under the desk. I'm too big to fit anywhere else. That's all right, I said, keeping my voice soft but firm. How old are you? The police are on their way. We'll just keep talking quietly until they get there, okay? Okay, he whispered. I'm 11. My parents let me stay home alone. I thought it was really cool. His voice cracked, like he was trying to hold on to that excitement he must have felt before everything went wrong. That's awesome, William. You must have been pretty stoked, huh? I tried to keep him calm, keep him talking. His breathing hitched, then stopped short. I heard a faint voice in the background, someone calling his name. That's my grandma, he whispered. She's been checking up on me. Are you sure she wasn't the one in the house when you called? I asked, trying to piece things together. No, I saw other people. They were wearing masks. His voice shook, and I could feel the fear radiating through the phone. I typed more details to dispatch, my fingers flying. Did they see you? No, I don't think so, he said, his voice barely holding steady. I was getting a snack in the kitchen when they came in through the back door. I ran straight to my dad's office. He started to hyperventilate, his breaths coming fast and shallow. William, I need you to breathe, okay? The police are almost there, I said, trying to anchor him. But then a woman's scream cut through the line, sharp and terrified. Grandma! William whimpered. I heard him shuffle, the sound of him crawling out from under the desk. William, stay where you are. I said, my voice urgent but controlled. Don't move. But my grandma. He was sobbing now, his voice breaking. I know, but she's going to be okay, I said, forcing calm into my words, even though my own heart was pounding. Sometimes you have to reassure yourself just to reassure someone else. Just stay put, don't move, and don't make a sound, okay? The police will be there any minute. He was breathing heavily, the kind of ragged breaths that come from pure panic. Then I heard it, a faint click, like a lock being tampered with, followed by the sickening sound of a door being smashed. William went silent. William, I said, my voice tense. Can you hear me? Footsteps echoed through the phone, slow and deliberate. Then faint whispers, two voices talking low. William started to speak, but his words turned into a scream. The phone clattered to the floor, and I heard a struggle, grunts, thuds, William fighting back. The intruders were swearing at him, their voices harsh and angry. Then a heavy thud, like something or someone, hitting the ground hard. What do we do with him? A woman's voice said, faint but clear enough to make my stomach turn. He saw our faces. A man replied, his tone cold. But he's just a kid, the woman said, sounding upset, almost pleading. The man's voice cut off abruptly, and I heard the phone being picked up. Then nothing. The call ended. The next day, the news broke my heart. William and his grandmother didn't make it. The police launched a full investigation, and eventually, the intruders were caught. They're in prison now, where they belong. But if you ask me, prison's too good for them. I know I shouldn't say that, but it's how I feel. Every time I think about William, that what if creeps back in. Could I have said something different? Could I have kept him under that desk? I'll never know, and that's the part that haunts me. I'm a pretty logical guy. I like to think through things, weigh the rational explanations before jumping to anything wild. But some calls I've taken as a 911 dispatcher, they defy logic. They stick with you, make you question what's real. In my district, there's a stretch of ghost towns, old, forgotten places where people sometimes wander and get themselves into trouble. Someone gets hurt, lost, or both, and with spotty cell service and no regular patrols, they can be stuck for days in a sinkhole or trapped in some crumbling building. One place in particular, deep in the woods off a side road, is an abandoned prison. Most folks don't even know it exists. The road to it is so overgrown, riddled with sinkholes. It's a miracle anyone finds it. The prison was only open for a few years before they shut it down. The ground's too unstable, known to collapse under trespassers. I grew up in this city, and I'd never heard of it until one call came in that I still can't explain. It was just after 3 a.m. on a Saturday, and I was still pretty new to the job, only a few months in. 911, what's your emergency? I said, settling into my chair. Hello? Hello? The voice was frantic, words tumbling out fast. My name's Robert James, and I'm at the abandoned prison in the ghost town. Please send someone here right now. My eyebrows shot up. Abandoned prison? I never heard of it, and for a second I thought it might be a prank. But the sheer panic in his voice told me otherwise. Okay, Robert, what's the address? I asked, trying not to sound skeptical. Hell, I don't know, he snapped, his voice shaking. How am I supposed to know? I'm not even from around here. The terror in his tone was enough to convince me this was no joke. All right, Robert, you said you're at an abandoned prison in a ghost town, right? Did you see any street signs or anything on the way in? Anything you can remember? My screen wasn't showing an address or provider, which made this trickier. I don't know, some road, maybe George Street or something. He took a deep, ragged breath. I saw some gravel on the side of the road, so I went down this path and found this damn place. I sent a dispatch to the road he mentioned, noting the gravel path detail. Okay, Robert, the police are on their way. Can you tell me exactly what happened? Are you alone? No, well, now I am, he choked out, his voice breaking. What do you mean? Who were you with? I pressed, trying to keep him focused. John. I don't know where he went. He was with me, and now he just isn't. I could hear him pacing, his breathing heavy, uneven. Let's start from the beginning, I said, keeping my voice steady. What happened? Okay, he paused, trying to collect himself. We heard about this ghost town from a friend. Thought it'd be cool to take some photos, you know? Our friend didn't even mention this damn prison, but when we found it, he stopped suddenly. What was that? He went quiet, and I strained to listen. Robert, what's going on? He didn't answer right away, then whispered, Sorry, I thought I heard something. He continued, When we found this place, John said it didn't feel right. I should have listened. So what happened to John? I asked, trying to keep him on track. Hell if I know, he said, his voice rising. I swear, he was right behind me. Where are you now? Are you still inside the prison? I asked, my fingers hovering over the keyboard, ready to add more details for dispatch. Yeah, but I don't know how to get out of here. It's pitch black, and I'm just using my phone. He stopped again. Wait, did you hear that? I listened closely and caught the faint sound of banging, like metal on metal. Yeah, I heard that, I said, my own pulse picking up. Can you find your way out of the prison? The only way in is through the basement, and I don't want to go back down there, he said, his voice thick with fear. Why not? Did something happen? I asked, trying to keep him talking. Kinda. I mean, no, but I think I heard things down there. Like people or something. He sounded like he was on the verge of losing it. I know you're scared, Robert, but you're gonna have to go through that basement unless there's another way out, I said, trying to sound encouraging. Yeah, you're right, he muttered. Okay, I'm going now. This place is messed up. Good. Just keep talking to me, okay? I said, hoping to keep him grounded. He started walking, his footsteps echoing through the phone. Then he stopped. John? John, are you down there? His voice was tight with worry. Suddenly, he went hysterical, screaming. Oh hell. Holy crap. His voice cracked, and I could hear him sobbing. Robert, what happened? Are you okay? I asked, fighting to keep my own panic in check. He didn't answer right away. I heard his shoes slapping against the floor as he ran, the phone jostling in his hand. Every few seconds, he'd stop, take a shaky breath, and mutter something I couldn't make out. I kept yelling into the phone, Robert, what's going on? Talk to me. Finally, he stopped running. I heard crickets chirping. He was outside. I made it, he gasped, letting out a shaky sigh of relief. I made it outside. That's great, Robert, I said, relief flooding through me. If you can, try to make it to the road. The police should be there any minute. Truthfully, I wasn't sure how close they were, but I just wanted him away from that place. Okay, he said, his voice steadier now. He started walking, and as he moved deeper down the trail, static began to creep into the call, chopping up his words. I'm sorry, can you repeat that? I didn't catch it, I said, straining to hear. The line went dead. That call didn't hit me hard until later, when I talked to a coworker about the abandoned prison. She told me it was a hot spot for young photographers looking for edgy shots. Then she mentioned a story about two guys who went there to take photos and never came back. Their families reported them missing, and when the police searched the area, they found their bodies. One had fallen into a sinkhole inside the prison, breaking his neck instantly. The other was found along the trail, dead from a heart attack, likely scared to death. I keep telling myself it was just a prank, that Robert's call wasn't real. But the panic in his voice, the raw terror, it felt too real. I can't shake it. Was it a sick joke or something else? It still sends chills down my spine when I think about it. The forests around here are thick, dark, and easy to get lost in. People love exploring the trails, especially the ones off the beaten path, but that's where things go wrong. Folks wander off, miss a marker, and suddenly they're hours deep in the bush with no idea which way is out. Cell service is patchy, but in some spots, it's just enough to make a call. Most of the time, we find them scared, tired, but alive. But not always. Some people disappear, and by the time a missing person report comes in, it's often too late. This call came in around 2 a.m. on a Sunday, and it's one I'll never forget. 911, what's your emergency? I said, leaning into the mic. A woman's voice came through, panicked and shaky. Hello? You need to help me. Oh, hell, what's going on? Ma'am, can you tell me what's happening and where you're calling from? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm to ground her. I don't know. I took a trail out here and went off it with a friend. Her words were rushed, tripping over each other. It was the river trail pass. She wanted to go off the main trail, so we did, and then we saw something in the bush and went toward it. Damn it. I sent a dispatch out to the river trail pass while she spoke. Okay, so what did you see? We found a body, she blurted out, her voice breaking. Mel, where'd you go? She started yelling her friend's name into the night. You found a dead body? I asked, my fingers typing fast to update dispatch. Does it look fresh, or has it been there a while? I don't know, she said, her voice trembling. There's a lot of blood, so maybe it's fresh. Oh, hell, who killed him? Mel. She was shouting again, her panic rising. Don't worry about that right now, I said, trying to keep her focused. Are you still with your friend? What's your name? The police are on their way. She was here like 2 seconds ago, she said, her voice cracking. My friend Mel. I'm Alex. Mel told me about this place, and we just wanted to go for a midnight hike. What do I do? I'm scared. Her breathing was rapid, almost hyperventilating. I know you're scared, I said softly. Do you remember how to get back to the trail? I can't remember which way we came, she cried. What the hell? Mel, where are you? She was screaming now, her voice raw with fear. Which way did you turn off the trail? Right or left? I asked, adding more details to the dispatch. I think it was the right, she said, her voice shaking. Perfect, I said, trying to sound reassuring. Did you see anyone else out there on the trail? No, it's supposed to be closed at night. We just wanted to have some fun. She paused, then whispered, Wait, did you hear that? I listened closely, but all I could hear was her heavy breathing. I didn't hear anything. What did you hear? It sounds like someone's out here walking around, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm gonna die out here, aren't I? She started sobbing, her words breaking apart. Listen, Alex, you're going to be okay, I said, trying to keep her calm. It might be Mel trying to find her way back to you. She started screaming again, calling out, Mel, Mel. Then she stopped, and we both listened in silence. No, I don't think so, she said, her voice quieter now. When are the police getting here? I don't want to be here anymore. Alex, stop walking, I said firmly. You need to stay put so the park rangers can find you. The more you move, the more lost you might get. Okay, she said, her voice small. What do I do with the body? Don't touch it, I said quickly. The guy looked like he was hurt really bad. I think someone may have killed him. His face, it's all beaten up. Just don't touch him, okay? I repeated. What's the last thing you remember when you were with Mel? Was she hurt at all? Part of me was curious, wondering how she didn't see her friend leave. I told her I was going to call the police, but she wanted to try and find a trail, Alex said. I tried to tell her not to go because we'd walked for a long time, and I thought she listened. But when I called you and turned around, she just wasn't there anymore. Maybe she'll find the trail and point the park rangers in the right direction, I said, trying to sound hopeful, though doubt was creeping in. You're right, maybe she's getting help. But it's so dark out here. I'm really scared. I know, I said, but just keep talking to me. They'll find you in no time. I was cut off by a piercing shriek, followed by the sound of running. Then silence. Alex? Alex, are you okay? What happened? I called into the phone. She whispered something I couldn't make out, and then the line went dead. After a grueling 3-day search, they found 2 bodies in the forest, about 2 miles from the main trail Alex and Mel had taken. It was Alex and the dead man she'd mentioned. The man had been beaten, his face battered beyond recognition. Alex had similar injuries, a blow to the back of the head and one to the face. Mel, though, was never found. Later, I learned Alex wasn't a local. She'd come to the park for a solo hiking trip and met Mel, who convinced her to stay an extra day for a midnight hike. Alex had called her family to tell them about her new friend. After the investigation, Mel became the prime suspect in both murders, the man's and Alex's. The injuries were too similar to be a coincidence. But Mel? She vanished into thin air, and to this day, no one's found her. That call taught me something dark about this job. Sometimes, the most dangerous people aren't strangers lurking in the shadows. Sometimes, they're the ones you think you know, the ones you trust to walk beside you in the dark. Being a dispatcher has taught me a lot, but the calls that hit the hardest are the ones involving kids struggling with their mental health. Teenagers, especially, they're at this point where it feels like their whole world is crashing down, and you're their last lifeline. What you say in those moments matters so much, and sometimes, no matter how hard you try, it's just not enough. Those are the calls that keep me up at night, the ones where I feel like I could have done more, said something different. This call was one of those. It came in during a day shift, which is rare for something this heavy, right around 1 p.m. 911, what's your emergency? I said, settling into my chair. A young guy's voice came through, shaking and desperate. Help. I need help, please. Okay, can you tell me where you are and what's going on? I asked, softening my tone to try to calm him down. You gotta stop me before I do something stupid, he said, his voice breaking as he cried quietly into the phone. My heart sank. Okay, what are you planning to do? I kept my voice gentle, hoping to get him to open up. I'm gonna kill them all, he said, his words barely holding together through his sobs. Whoa, hold on, I said, my fingers already typing to ping the cell provider for his location. Why would you want to do that? Talk to me. They all make fun of me, he said, his voice raw with pain. I'm not a loser. I'm so tired of it. They never stop, and no one does anything about it. He was sobbing harder now, each word dripping with years of hurt. What's your name? I asked, knowing calls like this were a coin toss. Sometimes you could talk them down, sometimes you couldn't. Tell me what happened. I need to know what's going on so I can help you. Matt, he managed between sobs. Last week, I was at school and Bradley and Connor, they thought it'd be funny to steal my phone. What did they do with it after they stole it? I asked, trying to keep him talking. They found pictures, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. Naked pictures of me. Okay, I said, my chest tightening. I can see why you're so upset. But is killing them really the answer? They're ruining my life, he cried. Why can't I ruin theirs? It's not fair. Have you talked to any adults about this? Like your teachers or your parents? I asked, hoping he had someone in his corner. The cell provider pinged back. He was at a local high school. They're all with the popular kids, not me, he said, his voice heavy with defeat. High school's not about people like me. I hear you, I said, leaning into the mic. I wasn't a popular kid either. I know what it's like to get picked on. Really, he said, a faint hint of relief in his voice, like he wasn't so alone for a second. Yeah, I said, seizing the moment. You want to know how I got through it? I changed schools, made a ton of new friends. It got better, but nobody wants to be friends with me, he said, his voice breaking again. They all think I'm weird. I don't think you're weird, I said firmly. And I'm sure if you switch schools, you find someone who doesn't think you're weird either. I can't change schools, he said, his voice flat now, all hope gone. My dad won't let me. I bet if he knew how upset you are, he'd change his mind, I said, trying to keep that spark of hope alive. Just then, I heard the faint sound of a school announcement system in the background. A lockdown was being called. No, he won't, Matt said, his voice hollow. You haven't hurt anybody, right? They're just gonna think I'm a freak. Listen to me, Matthew, I said, my voice urgent but steady. You're not a freak. Where are you right now? I'm in the change room, he said. I locked it so no one can get in. Okay, good, I said, my mind racing. I want you to think about this for a minute. I know these bullies hurt you, and they deserve to feel that pain back. But if you do this, are you really any better than them? He went quiet for a moment, just the sound of his soft crying coming through. I guess you're right, he said finally, his voice trembling. I know it's hard, I said, my heart pounding. But you're so much better than that. If you do this, you'll carry the guilt forever, and you don't want that, do you? No, he whispered. I know what I have to do. Matthew, I can make sure you get the help you need, I said, desperation creeping into my voice. You don't need to do anything. Please, just let me help you. You don't understand, he said, his voice eerily calm now. No one does. I heard him set the phone down, followed by a shuffle. Then a sickening sound, something heavy falling to the ground, followed by Matthew gasping for air. My stomach dropped. I screamed into the phone, Matthew. Matthew, answer me, but I knew what he'd done. I sent an urgent update to dispatch, adding an ambulance to the call. When they got there, they found Matthew's body hanging from a pipe in the boys' locker room. He was only 14, a freshman in high school. In his bag, they found a loaded gun and a suicide note. They also found another body in the showers, Connor, a senior who'd taken pleasure in tormenting Matthew. He'd been stabbed in the jugular with a pencil. Later, I learned more about Matthew's life. His dad was schizophrenic and often skipped his meds, leaving Matthew to care for him. Between that and the relentless bullying at school, he just had enough. But no matter how many times I replay that call in my head, there's always a part of me that believes I could have said something different, something that might have reached him. That guilt? It never goes away. I was supposed to be on vacation, but they were short-staffed, so I pushed my time off back a week. Some calls as a 911 dispatcher are pretty routine. You walk the caller through the steps, keep them calm, and wait for the police to handle things. Home invasions, or at least suspected ones, are common enough. People call in, spooked that someone's lurking around their house, and you tell them to lock the doors, find a safe spot, and sit tight. But not every call wraps up neatly, and this one was one of those. It came in just after 10 p.m. on a Wednesday night. 911, what's your emergency? I said, settling into my chair. Hi, a man's voice came through, tense but trying to stay composed. There's someone at our door, and they won't leave. Okay, what's your name? Can you tell me what's going on? I asked, my fingers ready to type. Yeah, sure. My name's Kevin, and I'm with my wife, Sherry. I woke up because she said she heard someone at the door while she was reading. I checked, and there's a guy out there. I told him to leave, but he's been standing there for like 15 minutes now. His voice was starting to shake, the panic creeping in. All right, Kevin, I'm sending someone over right now, I said, dispatching the call. Did the man say anything to you? Yeah, he said something, but I couldn't hear him through the door, Kevin replied. My wife and I are freaking out right now. That's totally understandable, I said, keeping my tone calm. Where are you both right now? Can you see him? No, I can't see him. We're in the bedroom down the hall, he said, his voice a little steadier. Can you check if he's still there? I asked, hoping to get a clearer picture. Yeah, okay, 1 second, he said. I heard him talking to his wife. Hey, honey, stay here. I'll be right back. I could hear Sherry murmur something as he left the room. He made his way to the front door, his footsteps echoing faintly. Hey, I can't see him anywhere, he said, sounding relieved. Do you think he left? That's good, right? Yeah, that's good, I said, but I wasn't ready to let him relax yet. We're gonna stay on the line together until the police get there, okay? What? If he's gone, you can call the police off, right? Kevin asked, hopeful. We don't know if he's actually gone, I said carefully. I just want to make sure you and your wife are safe. Oh yeah, true, I suppose, he said, his voice tinged with worry again. What now? Kevin, I need you to go around and check all the doors and windows to make sure they're locked, I said, just to be safe. Sure, I'll go check them now, he said. I heard him moving through the house, checking on Sherry to confirm the windows were locked. He walked around a bit more before his voice came back, laced with new panic. Hey, what do I do if my deck door is unlocked? His breathing was getting faster, heavier. Is there any sign someone came through there? Any way someone could get onto your deck? I asked, trying to keep him focused. Yeah, we have stairs to the deck, he said, his voice trembling. It doesn't look like anyone came in, but I don't know. The door wasn't locked tight. What do I do? What if he's inside? Let's not panic just yet, I said, though my own pulse was climbing. We don't even know if he's in the house or if he left. Just lock the patio door and go back to your wife. Stay in that room until the police get there, okay? Okay, I'll do that now, he said, his footsteps quick as he headed back. But then his breathing turned ragged. Honey, his voice was tight with worry. Kevin, are you all right? What's wrong? I asked, my stomach knotting up. I don't know where she is, he said, his voice breaking. She was right here when I left. Kevin, what's going on? I pressed, my heart pounding now. The man's in here, he shouted, his voice cracking with terror. He's got my wife. He's got a gun. Honey, are you okay? Please, just let her go, please. He was pleading now, his words tumbling out in desperation. A foreign voice echoed through the phone, yelling something I couldn't quite make out. Kevin, what's he saying? I asked, trying to stay in control. Kevin started, but the man cut him off, his voice louder now, angrier. I couldn't hear the words clearly, but the tone was menacing. No, please, don't hurt my wife. Kevin begged, his voice shaking as he tried to stay calm. I didn't know what to do, but I had to try something. Offer him the phone, I said quickly, hoping to shift the situation. Tell him someone wants to talk. Someone wants to talk to you, Kevin said, his voice trembling as he relayed the message. Hello? Who's there? A deep, unfamiliar voice came over the line, heavy with rage. Sir, my name's Ethan, and I'm with Dispatch, I said, keeping my voice as steady as I could. Can you tell me what's going on? I know who they are, the man shouted. I know what they've done to me. What do you mean? What have they done? I asked, trying to keep him talking. They did me wrong, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper, chilling me to the bone. I heard Sherry whimper in the background, and my heart sank further. Listen, you don't want to hurt them, I said, forcing calm into my words. They didn't do anything to you. He shuffled, and Sherry whimpered again. They did, he yelled, his voice booming through the phone, punctuated by the sound of something hitting hard. Maybe the phone, maybe his head. Kevin said something I couldn't make out, his voice muffled. I'm not crazy, the man screamed into the phone. You're not crazy, I said, my voice shaking despite my efforts. The police are almost there. They can help you. Less than a minute now, I added, hoping to de-escalate. But his rage only grew, his voice thundering through the line. Then 3 gunshots rang out, sharp and final. Sir, what happened? I managed to ask, my voice barely holding together. Anybody else? the man bellowed, his voice cold and final, before the line went dead. When the police arrived, the man surrendered his weapon and was arrested. Kevin had been shot twice and was dead on the scene. Sherry, shot once, was rushed to the ICU but died later that evening. A friend of mine who was on the dispatch that night filled me in later. The intruder was a severely mentally ill man who'd grown up in that very house, suffering years of sexual assault and abuse from his father and neglect from his mother. In his delusion, he mistaken Kevin and Sherry for his parents. That call left a mark on me, one more reminder of how broken some people are and how quickly things can spiral out of control. Some calls as a 911 dispatcher cut deeper than others, especially when they hit close to home. For me, anything involving rape or drug overdoses is tough because of my own past. My girlfriend, before we got together, was drugged at a college party when she was 18. She was lucky. A friend found her before things went too far, but it left me with a bitterness toward anyone who could do something like that. This call, though, pushed me over the edge. I lost my cool, and it cost me a 4-week suspension. Honestly, I deserved it. I was unprofessional, and in this job, you're supposed to stay neutral, no matter what. But this one got under my skin. It came in just after 1 a.m. on a Friday night. 911, what's your emergency? I said, the late hour making my voice a little groggy. The young guy's voice came through, frantic and loud over the sound of music blasting in the background. Oh damn, we screwed up. We screwed up bad. He was yelling, and I could tell he was on speaker because other voices were murmuring, though I couldn't make them out. Hey, can you tell me your name and what happened? It's hard to hear with the music, I said, trying to cut through the noise. It's Tanner, he said, his voice shaking. I think she's having a seizure or something, and she's puking. I didn't know, I swear. He was starting to sob now, his words breaking apart. Okay, Tanner, listen, I said, snapping into focus and sending out a dispatch. Turn her on her side and put something soft under her head, like a jacket or pillow. If she's seizing, she could choke on her vomit, so keep her mouth clear, but don't hold her down, you might hurt her. She's not stopping, he cried, his voice cracking. Stop holding her legs, man, he shouted at someone else. Tanner, can you tell me what happened? Who were you with? Did you find her like this? I asked, trying to piece it together. No, we did this to her, he said, his voice heavy with guilt. It's me, Cole and Mike. Is she gonna die? My blood ran cold, but I tried to stay calm. Just keep her on her side. What exactly happened? He hesitated, then spilled it. We put some stuff in her drink. Some guy gave it to us, said it'd work. We didn't know it'd end like this, man, I swear. He was sobbing again, his words barely coherent. The rational part of me vanished. I knew exactly what was happening. She'd been drugged, just like my girlfriend had been. My anger boiled over. Do you know what you gave her? I snapped. How long has she been seizing? Why the hell would you drug her? It's been a few minutes, he said, his voice small. She kind of stops for a bit, then starts again. I don't know what we gave her. I didn't ask the guy. We just wanted to have a good time with her. You know, you didn't think. I shouted, my voice sharp with rage. It sounds like she's overdosing. How much did you put in her drink? It was in a little bag, he said, his voice trembling. I don't know how much we used. We just dumped it in. You shouldn't have given her anything. I snapped, my bitterness spilling out. The police and ambulance are on their way. Are you going to jail? Damn right, it's not looking good for any of you. Focus on her. Is she still seizing? The music in the background seemed to get louder, making it harder to hear him. Is she breathing? I asked, trying to pull him back. I don't know, he said, panic rising again. You need to check, I said, my voice hard. If she's not breathing, start chest compressions. Your idea, man, you check. Tanner yelled at someone, probably Cole or Mike, who was arguing back. My temper was at its breaking point. Who cares who checks her breathing? Just do it, I shouted. If she dies, it's on all of you. Tanner mumbled something through his sobs, then broke down completely. Did we kill her? Oh God. I heard him start chest compressions, the rhythmic thumping coming through the phone. At that point, I lost it. I started yelling, accusing them of murder, telling them they'd rot in jail. My supervisor heard the commotion and cut in, taking over the call. I sat there, shaking, my heart pounding with rage and guilt. The girl didn't make it. She was only 16, overdosed on whatever those idiots slipped into her drink. Tanner, Cole, and Mike, all 19, were charged with criminal negligence causing death. They got 4 years, with a chance for parole. First-time offenders, the court said. 2 of them got out after 2 years for good behavior. If you ask me, 4 years wasn't nearly enough for what they did to that poor girl. After they were released, the city shunned them, and I don't know where they ended up. Honestly, I don't care. That call broke something in me. I know I generalized, lumping them all together as monsters, and that's not how a dispatcher is supposed to act. You're supposed to stay detached, objective, no matter how awful the situation. But being empathetic makes this job 10 times harder. Some people say if you're too sensitive, you shouldn't be in this line of work. But I think it's because I care so much that I'm good at it, even if it means carrying the weight of calls like this one for the rest of my life. Every dispatcher I've ever talked to agrees. Full moons bring out the weirdest calls. It's like the strangest, creepiest people decide to crawl out of the woodwork and dial 911. This call, hands down, is the creepiest I've ever taken, and I'm still torn on whether it was a sick prank or something more unhinged. It came in just after 4 a.m. on a Thursday during a full moon, when the night was already feeling eerie. 911, what's your emergency? I said, my voice steady despite the late hour. A calm, almost soothing voice came through the line. Hello. I need to make a confession. I raised an eyebrow. You'd be surprised how many people call 911 to confess something, often on the edge of doing something drastic. Okay, sir, what do you want to confess? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. He paused, and I could almost hear a smile in his voice. Before I tell you, you need to tell me about yourself. I frowned, my patience thinning. Sir, I'm not at liberty to give out personal information. This is an emergency line. Unless you have an emergency or know of one, I'll have to end the call. He let out a soft laugh, just for a split second, before taking a deep breath. Oh, I do have a confession to make. I was starting to get annoyed. This guy seemed like he was playing games. Does this confession relate to an emergency? I asked, my voice firm. Yes, he said, his tone still unnervingly calm. After a long pause, he continued, there are 3 bodies in the cellar. One's a woman, and the others are young boys. His voice was so steady, it sent a chill down my spine. I lifted my hand to signal my supervisor, who quickly patched into the call to listen. Dead bodies? I asked, trying to keep my voice even. Do you know what happened to them? He laughed again, a low, unsettling sound that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Of course they're dead. And of course I know what happened. They've been dead for a little while now. My heart was racing as I waited for the system to triangulate the call. In all my years as a dispatcher, I'd never had someone confess something this extreme so casually. Did you kill these people? I asked, and I could hear the tremble in my own voice. He laughed again, sensing my nervousness. You're scared, aren't you? He said, his voice dripping with amusement. I swallowed hard, trying to stay professional. You said they've been dead for a while. I can transfer you to the police station, and they can take your statement if you want. Yeah, we could do that, he said, his tone almost playful. But what if I told you I had another victim here with me? One who's still alive, in fact. My blood ran cold. I glanced to my supervisor, whose eyes were wide as she typed furiously, sending dispatch details. My job now was to keep him talking, get as much information as possible. Okay, I said, my voice shaking slightly. Are you planning on hurting them? If someone makes it here in time, he said, his voice turning stern, the joking tone gone. It's the old house. Doesn't have an address, but you know the one. Dispatch is being sent out right now, I said, hoping to keep him on the line. Tell me about the victim. He's a young man, he said, chuckling softly. Looks like no one really misses him. He paused, then continued. He's still alive. Not awake, but alive. Why are you doing this? I asked, my heart pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it. "I needed to confess," he said simply. "It's been 5 years. I've kept it a secret long enough. Today felt like the right day, the right time." And then, just like that, he hung up. I sat there, staring at my screen, my mind reeling. What the hell had just happened? A friend of mine who was on the dispatch that night filled me in later. When he and his partner got to the old house, no one was there, but it was clear someone had been living there. They searched the place top to bottom and found no trace of bodies, decayed or otherwise. No blood, no signs of a struggle, nothing. But they did find a boy, no older than 16, fast asleep in the house. He was a runaway looking for shelter and said he hadn't seen or heard anyone else. He'd only just gotten there. An investigation was launched, but it turned up nothing. My friend thinks it was a prank, that I got played by some sick joker. I want to believe that, but part of me can't shake the feeling it was something else. The guy's voice was so calm, so deliberate, it didn't feel like a game. Maybe it was the full moon bringing out the crazy in someone unhinged enough to make a call like that. Or maybe it was something darker. I don't know. The world's a weird place, and people are even weirder. Either way, this call still haunts me, and I'm not sure I'll ever have an answer. There was a time when I was an open book, especially in my early days as a 911 dispatcher. I'd share stories about my job and my life all over social media, not thinking twice about it. Big mistake. I didn't realize how small the world is, especially in a city of just over 200,000 people. You don't think one call could follow you home, but sometimes it does. This one did, and it started simple enough around 8 p.m. one evening. 911, what's your emergency? I said, settling into my shift. A woman's voice came through, heavy with sobs. "Oh God," she cried, her voice thick with despair. "What's your emergency?" I asked, softening my tone to meet her where she was. "There's really no point," she said, her words dripping with a deep, aching sadness. "It's all hopeless." I leaned into the mic, trying to keep her grounded. "There's always hope, even if you can't see it right now. I promise it's there. Can you tell me what's going on? I'm here to help." "You wouldn't understand," she said, her voice trembling. "I understand more than you think," I said gently. "Where are you right now? I want to get you some help." "I'm in my apartment," she said, her voice shaky as she started crying again. "I'm on Union Street." "Got it," I said, sending out a dispatch. "What's your name? Let's talk until they get there." She sniffled, her voice edged with frustration. "It's Cassie, but I'm not just going to spill my guts to some stranger hoping you'll get it. I don't even know your name, so telling you my problems is ridiculous. I'm ridiculous for thinking this would even work." There was a bite in her tone, like she was mad at me for even trying. "My name's Ethan," I said, keeping my voice steady. "So now you know who I am. I've been where you are, Cassie, more times than you'd think. I didn't know who to turn to either, but you did something brave. You called 911. You wanted someone to hear you, and guess what? It worked. I'm here, I'm listening, and I care." She let out a shaky laugh through her tears. "That's true. I might not know you," I continued, "but I know you're a good person. Don't be so hard on yourself. We all mess up, but that doesn't define who we are. Whatever's in your past, it's behind you. Think about your future, okay?" That opened the floodgates. Cassie started pouring out her heart, telling me about the weight she'd been carrying, things that had gone wrong, regrets that haunted her. I listened, letting her vent, keeping her on the line until the police arrived. Before we hung up, I told her to wait for them, and she thanked me, her voice softer now, like a bit of the darkness had lifted. "You saved my life," she said. "You're a real hero." I wished her the best and ended the call, feeling good about the outcome. It was a standard cry for help call, the kind I'd handled plenty of times. People struggling with their mental health often just need someone to listen, someone to relate to, and I'd done my job. I didn't think much of it afterward. It was a win, or so I thought. But it didn't end there. About a week later, I got a friend request on Facebook. Didn't think anything of it at first and accepted it. The woman messaged me saying she was Cassie, the same Cassie I'd talked out of suicide. She'd tracked me down to say thank you. I was uneasy, not because she was grateful, but because she'd found me so easily. It felt too personal, too close for a 911 call. I told her it was inappropriate to follow up like that, asked her not to contact me again, and blocked her. I thought that was the end of it. Boy, was I wrong. That call and Cassie came back to haunt me in ways I never expected, and it changed me in ways I'm still grappling with. It had been about a week since the call with Cassie, the woman I'd talked out of suicide on a 911 shift. I thought it was done, just another call with a good outcome. But then she sent me a friend request on Facebook. At first, I didn't think much of it and accepted, figuring it was harmless. She messaged me, saying she was the Cassie from the call, thanking me again for saving her life. It threw me off, not because she was grateful, but because she tracked me down so easily. It felt too personal for a 911 call, like a line had been crossed. I told her it was inappropriate to follow up like that, asked her not to contact me again, and blocked her. I thought that would be the end of it, that I'd solve the problem by cutting it off clean. I was wrong. Nearly 3 months passed, and I'd almost forgotten about Cassie. Life was moving on, work, my girlfriend Sarah, the usual routine. Then one day, Sarah asked if I knew a woman named Cassie. I didn't connect the dots at first, but when she showed me a picture, my stomach dropped. It was her. I was annoyed. Why would someone go to this much trouble just to say thank you? It didn't add up unless something was off about her. I told Sarah the whole story about the 911 call, but she brushed it off, saying Cassie was probably just being nice. Against my better judgment, Sarah connected with her on Facebook, and they became fast friends. Cassie started coming around a lot. She'd show up at our place, hang out with Sarah, and every time she was there, something felt wrong. It wasn't anything I could pin down at first, just a vibe. The way she talked to me, the way her eyes lingered a little too long, it gave me the creeps. I couldn't shake the feeling she was hiding something, like there was more to her than the friendly front she put on. But Sarah was so happy about their friendship, I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. I tried to ignore it, chalking it up to paranoia from the job. Then one day, Cassie showed up while Sarah was out. She knocked on the door, asking where Sarah was. I told her Sarah was at work and would be back later, suggesting she'd call or come by another time. But Cassie wasn't having it. She insisted on waiting inside. I didn't like it, but she was so pushy, I let her in, thinking it'd be fine for a bit. We sat in silence for a while, the air thick with awkwardness. Then she broke it. "So Ethan," she said, her voice light but with this weird amusement, "do you ever think about other women besides Sarah?" I froze, my skin prickling. "No, why would I?" I said, confused and instantly uncomfortable. She smiled, a slow, deliberate curve of her lips. "I see the way you look at me sometimes. I can't help but feel like you like what you see." My stomach churned. She was fishing for something, hoping I'd take the bait. "You need to go," I said, my voice firm. "Right now." She stood up just as Sarah walked in, all smiles, thrilled to see her new friend. I didn't say a word. I just walked into my office, shut the door, and stared at my blank computer screen, trying to process what had just happened. Every part of me wanted to tell Sarah, to warn her about Cassie's creepy behavior, but a small voice in my head held me back. Sarah was so happy with this friendship, and I didn't want to seem like I was overreacting or trying to control her. So I kept quiet, deciding I'd just avoid Cassie as much as I could. A month later, Sarah came home looking rattled, her face pale and her hands shaky. When I asked what was wrong, she said she felt uncomfortable around Cassie, didn't want to see or talk to her anymore. She wouldn't say why at first, just that something was off. I didn't push her for details right away. Instead, I grabbed my phone, sent Cassie a message telling her to leave us both alone, and blocked her on everything. I figured that would be the end of it. A few days later, Sarah finally opened up. She said Cassie had been asking her all sorts of personal questions about me. Stuff like my physical build, what I liked in bed, how many people I'd been with, how often Sarah and I were intimate. Weird, invasive stuff. Sarah said Cassie talked about me constantly, bringing me up in every conversation like she was obsessed. Sarah wasn't the confrontational type, so she'd let it slide, but it had gotten to the point where it freaked her out. Hearing this, I felt sick. I didn't tell Sarah about the incident in our house. I didn't want to upset her more or make her feel worse. I just wanted to move on and forget Cassie existed. Then, about 6 months after that first incident, I came home from a long shift, exhausted and ready to crash. It was just after 8 a.m., and Sarah had already left for work. I was in the shower, trying to wash off the night, when there was a knock at the door. I threw on some clothes, expecting a delivery or something mundane. When I opened the door, there was Cassie. She looked different, older, more put together, almost unrecognizable from the last time I'd seen her. I stood there stunned, not sure whether to tell her to leave or ask what she wanted. She made the choice for me, brushing past me and sitting on my couch like she owned the place. Before I could say anything, she started undressing, saying she knew how I felt about her, that it was okay because Sarah was gone, and she wouldn't keep me up long. My mind went blank, a blur of shock and anger. "You need help," I snapped. "Get the hell out of my house." She didn't budge. Instead, she started shaking with rage, her face twisting in a way I'd never seen before. She let out a blood-curdling screech and lunged at me, clawing at my face and yelling obscenities. I've seen women get mad. Hell, I grew up with an older sister, but this was something else. I used my size to pin her down, keeping her sharp nails away from my face. She started making sexual comments about being pinned, taunting me, saying Sarah wouldn't like this. That pushed me over the edge. I'm not a violent person, but in that moment, I was furious. I grabbed her by the shoulders, my hand shaking as I pulled her face close to mine, my anger boiling over. Part of me wanted to hurt her, not just for what she was doing to me, but for the way she'd messed with Sarah, the way she'd invaded our lives. I let go, and her head hit the floor with a loud thud. She went still, unconscious. Panicked, I grabbed the phone and called 911, explaining everything to a fellow dispatcher. I called Sarah next, my hands still trembling. When the police arrived, I laid out every detail. The call, the Facebook messages, her showing up, the attack. One of the officers recognized Cassie right away. Turns out she was notorious. When she was 17, she'd stalked an ex-boyfriend so intensely his parents got a restraining order. A few years later, she was institutionalized for 2 years after trying to harm another woman for dating a guy she was fixated on. I wasn't her first target, and I probably wouldn't be her last. Sarah and I pressed charges for stalking and got restraining orders against her. It's been over 2.5 years since that day, and I haven't seen or heard from Cassie since. But the whole thing changed me. I deleted all my social media accounts. Reddit's the only place I've stayed, and that's just because I can stay anonymous. This job, these experiences, they've made me more guarded, less trusting. I'm not sure it's for the better, but it's who I am now. Dispatching for 911 is a job that gets under your skin, changes you in ways you don't see coming. I've seen the best and worst of people, moments of raw courage and moments of pure horror, all through a headset. The calls I've taken, they've shaped me, for better and for worse. Some of them, like the ones I've shared, still haunt me, but they're just a fraction of what I've dealt with. In a city of just over 200,000, you'd think things would be quiet, but there's so much darkness that never makes it to the news or the papers. If people knew the half of it, the panic would be unreal, especially on certain days, like during a full moon when the world seems to lose its mind. I've been hesitant to share the personal side of this job, but I'll open up a bit here. Early on, when I first started dispatching, I was an open book. I post about my life, my work, everything on social media, not thinking twice about it. I didn't realize how vulnerable that made me until it was too late. The world's smaller than you think, and in a city this size, it's tiny. One call, one person can turn your life upside down, and that's exactly what happened with Cassie. Her call came in around 8 p.m., and at the time, it felt like a win, a standard cry for help call where I talked her down, got her to open up, and made sure she was safe until help arrived. She called me a hero, and I went home feeling like I'd done my job right. But then she found me on Facebook, thanking me again. It creeped me out. Not the gratitude, but how easily she tracked me down. I told her it was inappropriate, blocked her, and thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. Cassie wormed her way into my life, befriending my girlfriend, Sarah, and showing up at our place. There's always something off about her. The way she looked at me, the way she talked, like she was hiding something. It got worse when she cornered me one day, making suggestive comments, and eventually attacked me in my own home. That day, I hit my breaking point, and it took everything in me not to lose control completely. The police got involved, and I learned Cassie had a history of obsession, stalking, even violence. Sarah and I got restraining orders, and I haven't seen her in over 2.5 years, but the whole thing left scars. That experience changed me. I used to be open, trusting, willing to share my life with anyone who'd listen. Not anymore. I deleted all my social media accounts. Reddit's the only place I still hang out, and that's because I can stay anonymous. My anonymity is everything now. I don't talk about myself, where I'm from, or what I do outside of work. The job's made me guarded, cautious, maybe even a little paranoid. I'm not sure it's for the better, but it's who I am now. The calls themselves, Cassie's, the ones with kids like William or Matthew, the ones with senseless violence like Kevin and Sherry's, they've taught me how fragile life is, how quickly things can spiral. There's so much that happens in this city. In every city, that stays hidden. The worst of it never sees the light of day, and maybe that's for the best. If people knew the full scope of what we hear, what we deal with, it'd be too much. Full moons are the worst, though. Every dispatcher will tell you that. It's like the crazies come out to play, and we're the ones left picking up the pieces. I've changed because of this job. I've seen the horrors that plague even small cities, and I can only imagine what it's like in the big ones. Dispatching has been life-changing, in good ways and bad. It's made me better at listening, at connecting with people in their darkest moments, but it's also made me carry their pain. I don't know if I'll ever be the same, but I keep showing up, taking the calls, because someone has to. And maybe, just maybe, I can make a difference for someone else before their world falls apart.